Thank you so much for joining us this morning. This is the California Interagency Council on Homelessness Encampment Resolution Funding Program, Round 3. This is ERF-3-R Applicant Conference. We thank you all for joining, and we're going to go ahead and start with some words of introduction and welcome. To kick us off, I am Nicole Zaragoza-Smith, and I'm the Program Implementation Supervisor here at Cal ICH. I'll go ahead and turn things over to Jeannie.
Thanks, Nicole. Good morning, everyone. I'm sorry I'm having some technical difficulties today, so I'm on my phone, so hopefully everyone can see and hear me okay. So again, thanks for joining us today. My name is Jeannie McKendry, and I serve as the Grants Development Section Chief here at Cal ICH. I'm happy to be with you all this morning for our walkthrough of the ERF Round 3 NOFA. For those of you that were engaged with ERF Round 2, you'll find that there are really no substantive changes between ERFs Round 2 and 3. Both rounds have a heightened focus on permanent housing solutions, include a rolling application period with scoring thresholds for all applications received, and include a prioritization of up to 50% of the allocated funds towards ERF projects that serve people living in encampments on the state right-of-way. ERF to date has awarded $413 million to fund 68 separate ERF projects across the state. In total, those 68 projects plan to serve nearly 14,000 individuals currently living in encampments with supportive services and ultimately permanent housing. We all know that unsheltered homelessness is a huge crisis across the state, and these ERF funds are giving local jurisdictions the resources needed to help resolve local encampments in a human-centered and humane way that results in permanent housing solutions for these individuals. As we all know, permanent housing is the only cure for homelessness and the only way to actually solve this crisis. Lastly, I want to reiterate that the North Star of ERF is not to resolve encampments, but rather to resolve the homelessness of people living in those encampments, which, if completed successfully, will also have that added benefit of the resolution of the physical encampment location. So I want to thank you all in advance for your passion and dedication to serving our most vulnerable neighbors. Before Nicole dives in on the walkthrough of the NOFA, I'd like to invite our partner from Caltrans, Elisa Becerra, Deputy Division Chief over the Caltrans Office of Homelessness and Encampments, to say a few words. Elisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeannie. And I too am having those technical difficulties, so I hope everyone can hear and see me, even if it comes out a little delayed. But yes, we are excited about this latest round of grants. So the Encampment Resolution Grants, Caltrans is working to connect people experiencing homelessness on its right-of-way to more secure and stable housing situations offered by local partners. And I saw someone in the chat ask, what is the right-of-way? Well, the right-of-way is any piece of land that's being used for transportation, like a park and ride, a highway, a bike path. So the strength of this effort relies on collaboration, trust, and a shared commitment to creating real solutions that help the people that need most. Now, these grants ensure equity, so people sheltering on the city, county, and Caltrans property can benefit from these resources. That's why working with our partners is so important. That's why these grants are so critical in creating meaningful solutions that form in the form of places for people to go and additional resources for outreach. This funding is to make an impact across the state in small and large communities, and the Encampment Resolution Fund provides tangible resources for local partners to fill the current gaps that prohibit or stifle ideas from becoming real solutions. And again, we are very excited to be a part of this process and a part of the process of making solutions. So back to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elisa, and thank you, Jeannie. We'll now turn to the agenda. So we've just completed the welcome and introductions. I'm going to take you through a NOFA walkthrough now. This is going to include an overview of our program purpose and priorities, a little bit of background about the ERF program, and a highlight of the funding made available through this NOFA. We'll then turn to eligibility, including eligible uses, eligible population to serve, eligible applicants. And then we'll shift to discussing and hopefully demystifying some of those core components of that program. Specifically, what do we mean by encampment and what do we mean by state right-of-way? We'll then turn to the application itself, including the required components and the overall timeline. And then we'll look to the program in a larger sense, right? Discuss the statutory deadlines, reporting requirements for those that are awarded funds, and highlight that Cal ICH will be transitioning to HCD in the near future. After the NOFA walkthrough, I will conclude the recording and we'll shift to the Q&A portion of today's presentation. We're going to start by answering questions that were submitted prior to the December 1st deadline. So we'll work through those on the screen, and then time permitting, we'll move to a live Q&A session. In order to submit a live Q&A, you can go ahead and type a question into the chat at any point. We will be monitoring. And then if you would prefer at the live Q&A session, you can also request to speak by raising your hand. If you're joined by phone, you would press *6 in order to indicate that, or sorry, *9 to indicate that you want to speak. So moving directly into the program purpose, the ERF program will fund actionable, person-centered local proposals that resolve the experience of unsheltered homelessness for people residing in encampments. Resolving these experiences of homelessness will necessarily address the safety and wellness of people within encampments, resolve critical encampment concerns, and transition individuals into interim shelter with clear pathways to permanent housing or directly into permanent housing, using data-informed, non-punitive, low-barrier, person-centered, housing-first, and coordinated approaches. Proposals for ERF may bolster existing successful models and/or support new approaches that provide safe, stable, and ultimately permanent housing for people experiencing homelessness in encampments. So it's a lot. So to reiterate and sort of summarize, again, the purpose is to resolve people's experiences of homelessness in encampments. And this places a major focus on permanent housing because, as Jeannie mentioned, we know that permanent housing is the way to resolve homelessness. Shifting to the program's priorities, we are looking for applications that demonstrate cross-system collaboration, including collaborations with state and federal entities, and innovative efforts to resolve encampment issues while focusing on protecting the health and well-being of the individuals living in those encampments. We're also looking for applications that represent the diversity of communities across the state. This includes, but is not limited to, rural, urban, and suburban communities. And finally, we will be prioritizing up to 50% of the funds made available for projects that address encampments on state right-of-way. Shifting into a little bit of the program background, the Encampment Resolution Program encompasses 3 separate appropriations. This initially started as a very small program, right? That $50 million made available through ERF-1. And that program, when we first opened it, was vastly oversubscribed. And so the legislature, along with the administration, have gone ahead and made 2 additional appropriations. These 2 appropriations have 2 distinct disbursements within them. So as directed by statute, Cal ICH first looks back to applications that were received in the prior round that met all applicable program requirements, but were not funded because we simply ran out of money. After making those awards, then Cal ICH shifts to the next stage, which is opening up a rolling application process, right? And under that rolling application process, we can accept new applications and make new awards under this appropriation. So this gives you an overview of sort of what are the pieces of these, long acronyms. Essentially, ERF, that refers to the program. The number refers to the appropriation. And then L refers to when we have looked back to applications from the prior round and pulled them forward for funding because they met all of the program requirements. Whereas R refers to applications that are received and funded under the appropriations rolling application process. So all that to say, this NOFA is for ERF-3-R. So this is the 3rd appropriation. This is the rolling application process under that 3rd appropriation. And this NOFA makes available just shy of $299 million for applicants to compete for. So who can apply for these funds? Broadly speaking, local jurisdictions and continuums of care. By local jurisdiction, we really mean any California county and any California city. For continuums of care, these are defined by Section 578.3 of Title 24. They cover the full geography of California, but again are sort of governed under a separate set of codes. Beyond the eligible applicants, we also want to highlight the eligible uses of these funds. ERF funding must be spent in alignment with the program objective, in support of the eligible population, in compliance with Housing First, and within the grant term. So these are these overarching program guidelines, right, that should really guide how ERF funds are proposed to be spent and then spent in actual communities. There is one additional piece. Because these are competitive funds and applicants are required to submit a specific proposal to resolve the homelessness of people residing at a specific encampment, the program proposal itself, once accepted, also helps to refine how funds may be spent. So what do I mean? For example, for the first component, funds must be spent in alignment with the program objective and the awarded proposal, right? The objective is listed here. And again, it's that big statement about resolving people's experience of homelessness, right? With those person-centered, low barrier, non-punitive housing first and coordinated approaches. We're moving people into interim housing with clear pathways to permanent housing, right? Or directly into permanent housing. And that is then further refined by the description in the selected proposal and the model provided therein, right? So at that point, funds would need to be spent in alignment with the objective and as described and in alignment with the selected proposal. Similarly, the eligible population to serve, broadly speaking, are people experiencing homelessness in encampments in California. But again, the application asks you to identify a prioritized encampment and to describe the people that you intend to serve. So once a proposal is selected, right, those eligible uses are further refined to people experiencing homelessness in encampments as described in the selected proposal. So just want to highlight there, we have a very broad array or a very broad framework for the eligible uses that are simultaneously guided by program requirements and the selected proposals. When applicants are developing their applications and their budgets, you will be asked to describe your budgets using a set of eligible use categories. For those that are familiar with the HAP program, these have largely been adapted directly from that program to help with alignment and guidance. And I'm not going to read through every word on these slides, but I just want to walk through what are the categories that applicants will be expected to use in describing their budgets. Broadly speaking, those eligible use categories are rapid rehousing, operating subsidies, street outreach, services coordination, systems support, delivery of permanent housing, prevention and shelter diversion, interim housing, improvements to existing emergency shelters, and administrative costs. I do want to highlight the definition of administrative costs. Here we are talking about the costs incurred by the city, county, or COC, right? That direct recipient of Cal-ICH funding. And we're talking about the costs that that entity incurs to administer the program allocation. These administrative costs are capped at 5%. This does not include other costs that are necessary to operate the program. And this does not include costs for, say, service provider admin. The last two things I want to highlight are that ERF funds may not be used for site restoration. Similarly, ERF funds may not be used for any enforcement activity. So that concludes the portion on eligibility, and now we're going to shift to discussing some of the key components and their definitions. So obviously, this is the encampment resolution program. The term encampment is central. So what do we mean? While statute does not provide a definition, research published by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development provides the following guidance. They say essentially, encampments typically include a group of people sleeping outside in the same location for a sustained period. The presence of some type of physical structures, such as tents, tarps, lean-tos. It tends to include the existence of social support or a sense of community for residents. And it tends to include the presence of personal belongings, coolers, bicycles, mattresses, clothes, etc. So while this is how the research is defining what an encampment is, ERF does require applicants to describe a prioritized encampment to be served, right? So ERF is not intended to be used to fund community-wide encampment resolution. It's not intended to fund community-wide unsheltered homelessness resolution. Applicants must describe a prioritized encampment to serve. If an applicant is looking to propose to serve a large, non-contiguous, or multiple sites, the encampment may only be addressed through a single application if all three of the following conditions are met. Those conditions are: the justification for prioritizing the encampments is the same, and the demographics and the service needs of the residents of the encampments is sufficiently similar, and the same set of services and service providers, including outreach, interim housing, and permanent housing, will be used to resolve the identified people's experiences of homelessness in the encampments. Applicants will be expected to prepare a separate application for each encampment that does not meet requirements A through C, right? So you got to hit all three of them in order for something to be acceptable under a single application. Shifting to the state right-of-way, again, just to highlight, up to 50% of the $400 million appropriated will be prioritized for proposals that serve people living in encampments on state right-of-way. As Warren mentioned in the chat, if you have any questions about whether a specific location is on a state right-of-way, reach out to your local coordinator. We have a resource on the website that lists each Caltrans district and the coordinator to contact. One other highlight here is that local jurisdictions have priority to apply for ERF programs on the state right-of-way over COC applicants up until May 1st of 2024. If a COC would like to apply to serve an encampment located on a state right-of-way before May 1st of 2024, the COC must provide a letter of local acknowledgement from each overlapping local jurisdiction. The letter must identify the prioritized encampment, confirm that the COC has communicated with the local jurisdiction about its intent to apply, and confirm that the local jurisdiction does not intend to apply for ERF-3-R funds to serve the same prioritized encampment. Now, I want to put this requirement and this timeline in the context of the larger program. So looking more broadly at the statutory deadlines, as you may be aware, the NOFA and application were released on November 27th of 2023. We have 3 application windows that run through the end of June. So this requirement for COCs will last for the first 2 application windows. So application window 1 runs from when the application was released up until the end of January. At the end of January, we'll close application window 1 and take those applications and review them. We will immediately open application window 2, which will run from February 1st until April 30th of 2024. At that point, the prioritization for local jurisdictions to apply to serve encampments on state right-of-ways ends, right? And in that third application window that runs from May 1st through June 30th of 2024, that requirement no longer applies. I want to skip ahead just quickly to show you the application window graphic. So this shows you how the application windows run consecutively and the application window and review sort of waterfall into one another. Looking ahead to those that are ultimately funded, the first set of fiscal deadlines will hit on June 30th of 2025. So that's the deadline to expend 50% of the allocation and the deadline to obligate 100% of the allocation. Looking at the application, review, contracting, and disbursement process, awarded applicants are likely to have approximately 12 months from award to this first set of fiscal deadlines. These deadlines come up really fast, so please take that into consideration in your overall program design. Finally, ERF-3-R funds must be fully expended by June 30th of 2027, and any funds that are not expended by that date shall be returned to Cal ICH and revert to the fund of origin. So again, there's that application windows graphic. And then we'll look ahead to reporting. So for proposals that are selected and ultimately contract, folks become grantees, we want to lay out what the reporting expectations are. A grantee is expected to submit quarterly reports in the format provided by Cal ICH. In addition, grantees shall adopt a specific project setup in their local HMIS that allows Cal ICH to identify all served clients. Once an application is submitted and approved, no substantive changes to the program design are allowed unless the grantee informs Cal ICH of the change, explains the impact of the change, and receives written approval from Cal ICH to proceed. Furthermore, if enforcement action is taken or the encampment is otherwise dispersed, the grantee must notify Cal ICH immediately. Grantees may also receive ad hoc requests for information from Cal ICH or its contractors that support program monitoring, research, and evaluation. And to close out our NOFA walkthrough today, we do want to highlight that grant administration work of the Council will be transitioned to HCD in fiscal year 24-25. As entities both under BCSH, the Council and HCD will continue to coordinate closely to achieve a seamless transition for grantees. Ultimately, transferring the administration of the grant programs to HCD will allow for greater support and technical assistance to grantees, ensuring greater homelessness reduction outcomes.